about two rivals in Texas who are going head-to-head in these recruiting matchups. Let's talk about their recruiting classes and what they look like going into fall camp for this upcoming college football season. Welcome to the channel, everyone. We are going to be talking a lot of college football here very soon, as we are about a month away from the college football season beginning, and I am so excited. I even have a podcast with a couple guys that we're going to create with Player's Choice, and it's all college football content, so I'm so excited to get that started. But here on this channel, let's talk some Texas and Texas A&M going head-to-head, and both programs are in very interesting spots right now when it comes to the class of 2023, especially coming off a historic class for Texas A&M in the previous year, and Texas also getting the number 5 overall class, even though they went 5-7. Obviously, I've already spoken plenty of times about the expectations with Texas going into next season. I even have a video on it on this channel just recently, basically talking about how this team needs to perform if they want to keep the momentum that they have built this summer. Texas A&M, on the other side, has just started their momentum. They don't have a massive class right now, but the potential is endless with this team, especially with the visits and who is coming to visit Texas A&M right now. But I want to talk about this specifically because of Anthony Hill. Anthony Hill was a guy that was decided between Texas A&M and Texas, but decided to go with Texas A&M today after he had taken an official visit to a pool party, which has a massive visitors list. I'll put it on the screen right now. Shout out to Aggies Today, by the way, a fantastic Instagram account. If you want to get into recruiting, by the way, he is a fantastic guy. Young high school kid. Somebody's going to pay him big money one day to be a great recruiter because this dude is elite. And I honestly, like, this channel is a gateway for me at least to want to get people more interested in recruiting. I think the drama of it is so awesome. It just adds to the next level of complexity of college football. Obviously, college football is not perfect. Most sports aren't, but college football is flawed and we accept it and we love it for that. And recruiting just adds another layer of depth that I think is so interesting for the sport. But if we're going to talk about this summer of recruiting for these two programs, it all begins with Arch Manning, a guy that had brought in the Arch effect to Texas. Texas, I have to give them props. If I'm going to give props to Texas A&M and their potential, I got to give credit to the team that actually got some commits this summer. And obviously, they're going to have to perform on the field to keep them. But congratulations to Texas right now. They are rolling when it comes to, honestly, college football and their recruiting. Their recruiting has been fantastic. Obviously, losing Anthony Hill hurts. But if we go look to my screen to the right, you get Derek Williams, Jonte Cook, Malik Mohammed, Jaden Chapman, Sadir Mitchell, Payne Kirkland. And I want to talk about Payne Kirkland for a second. That was a guy that was not expected to go to Texas. There was a lot of times where he had put out a top 5, top 3. I can't remember specifically. I'll put up the post. But it was not expected that he was even going to consider Texas. Obviously, Texas had offered him. But he comes out of nowhere, and that is the definition of the Arch effect. People want to go block for Arch. People want to go catch balls for Arch. And people want to run the ball with Arch. He is a big deal for this class. He is the key catalyst for the entire class. And I would say the same thing for Texas A&M and Anthony Hill. They just got their prime time guy for this class. Obviously, Texas A&M is not going to be taking as many recruits as they did last cycle, just based off the fact they do not have as much to offer on the team. And they took a massive class last cycle. It was remarkable. Obviously, #1 class of all time. Congratulations to Texas A&M and College Station. They are building something special. Also, Waffle House, build one in College Station. I'm just telling you that right now. But Texas is not stopping there. If they have a good season, I do expect this team not only to keep their top 5 position, but potentially make a run for the #1 spot. Obviously, there's a lot of recruits that are making their commitments right now, as there's an opening between 2 dead periods, one in the summer and then one right before fall camps begin. And right now is when a lot of players are taking their official visits, because many times, obviously, you have the guys that want to do the National Signing Day thing, even early National Signing Day. But there is a small section of recruits, and honestly, if you really look at it, a majority, that want to get their commitment out of the way and focus on their final football season as a high schooler. And if you've played high school football, you know how important that senior season is. And having all the noise of where you're going to play next could bother you, and you just want to get that out of the way and pick your team. These relationships have been built over years. That's mainly why I think Anthony Hill picked Texas A&M over Texas. Wasn't because of the NIL. It wasn't because Jonte Cook, a guy that is a pinnacle part of Texas's recruitment, because he is so vocal. And you remember, if it goes off the top of my head, Bobby Taylor was that guy for Texas A&M, and I believe Jonte Cook is going to try to be that guy for Texas. But the reason why Anthony Hill went with Texas A&M is because of the relationship with Tyler Sancooney and Jimbo Fisher getting very involved. He was their number one target on their list. You could argue David Hicks, but in my opinion, from what I've read and the reports I've heard, it's always been Anthony Hill. Now it's David Hicks. And now I'd probably assume it's Austin Novosad and plenty of others. And I'll get into Austin Novosad in a minute. But Texas specifically, with this recruiting class and all the momentum and all the commits that they got, now it's the goal for them is to perform on the field and really reel these guys in and make them sign on early National Signing Day. It's one thing to not have commits and a bunch of targets and to have commits and try to keep them throughout the season. That means they're going to have to perform. Both of these programs are going to have to perform this season, whether they like it or not. Obviously, Texas A&M's probably going to have to do better than 8-4 if they're going to want to keep the momentum going, especially with the transfer portal. Texas cannot lose to Kansas. I don't think they will, and I think 5-7 is not in the realm of possibility for this team. But last year, I didn't expect that either, and look what they did. Both of these programs are in pinnacle spots for the entirety of the next 5 years, especially with Texas going to SEC and A&M having playoff aspirations and trying to beat the curse of that fake trophy that they brought in when they brought in Jimbo Fisher. And the battle for Anthony Hill did not stop at just him. There's plenty of other prospects that are going head-to-head with Texas and Texas A&M, with schools sprinkled in between. Anthony Hill was a good example just because those were his final two. But if we look over here, we have Cedric Baxter, who I believe will end up at Texas. I'm not going to put in a crystal ball. If you like crystal balls, I would like to talk to you because crystal balls ruin the fun of recruitment, and it's really, really lame. Also, Darian Gillette, a guy that has gone back and forth between Texas and Texas A&M. He was reported to go to this pool party that Texas A&M throws every single year that has become nationally famous because of what they did last year when a lot of those players that are on their recruitment list last year went to that pool party. They were not committed at the time, and slowly but surely, Evan Stewart, Walter Nolan, many others became an integral part of that recruiting class because they took that first visit at the pool party. There's been plenty of reports of how legendary this pool party is and also the cooking by Coach Terry Price. But we also have Tavanio, a cornerback, 4-star, who's also going back and forth between Texas and Texas A&M. Malik Mohammed was a guy that was considering Texas and Texas A&M. He went to Texas. So they're drawing punches between each of these programs. And I think it'll be really interesting where they land. Obviously, when you really get into recruiting, you have to understand how many prospects they're taking in, what is the ranking, and how quality are these players. Obviously, you're going to find diamonds in the rough, and rankings really do not matter as much as you think they do. Stars do not matter as much as you think they do. They are political. That's a whole nother video for another day. That's what we got to go off of, are these rankings and how quality are these recruitments and how important these players are. And I understand Texas A&M is going to be very selective with who they bring in. Texas is bringing in as much talent as possible. I understand they're bringing in the more flashy guys, the skill position players, the guys that really want to rack up them stats. I do believe the wide receiver position is going to be a premier spot for Texas just based off the fact that when I look at Sarkisian and I see what he did at Alabama with Tua and Mac Jones, those wide receivers obviously are mega talented, but he did put them in fantastic positions to win and refine their game. I do love Brendan Marion, their wide receiver head coach that they signed this year. Fantastic hiring. I think the wide receiver position is going to be fantastic. But on the same flip side for Texas A&M, the defensive line is going to be dirty. You saw the class that they brought in last year. You see what David Hicks can do. You bring it back to a linebacking position that could bring in Darian Gillette and Anthony Hill Jr. Texas A&M's defense is ready for the SEC. Now the offense, they got to figure out the quarterback position. And speaking of which, Austin Novosad, the 8th quarterback on the list for 2023, is a Baylor commit. He was getting pursued by Texas A&M and Ohio State, but Ohio State just got a commit from another quarterback, which I'll put on the screen. Austin Novosad is a Texas A&M legacy, and I know A&M is going to pursue him. Here is the caveat with that. Malachi Nelson, the number 2 overall player in this class, right behind Arch, unless you're talking to ESPN. ESPN has Malachi Nelson above Arch Manning. This is a big deal. He takes an official visit to Texas A&M. He is at the pool party as I speak. And you might take this with a grain of salt, but it's interesting to see a guy of that level take a visit here. I understand his teammate, I believe teammate or really close friend, Zach Branch, who is a USC commit. Both of them are USC commits, by the way. Has been taking multiple visits to Texas A&M. It's reported that he probably is going to be at a game or two, which is a big deal for Texas A&M because when they last bring in a massive visitor list to the Alabama game, like Walter Nolan and many others, massive commits came in. And if I were to predict which game that would be, it'd probably be Miami or LSU at the very back tail end of the season for Texas A&M. And now that's why I think it's so interesting with this entire recruiting class for Texas A&M, especially in 2023, as they're going to be very selective with who they take in. And as well, Austin Novosad is probably going to be making his decision this next weekend or right after this weekend. And wherever he goes, if he ends up choosing Texas A&M, it's a fantastic snag for Jimbo Fisher, just based off the fact that he lost Eli Holstein, Dante Moore. They've been missing a little bit on these quarterbacks in the 2023 class, and he made a late push for Austin Novosad. So if he could snag him, that's a huge deal. Having Malachi Nelson at the pool party will put a little bit of pressure on him. It just depends on how Austin takes that, as if they're forcing it, or is it really just there's one spot, you got to take it, or you're going to see a guy like Malachi Nelson potentially flip over, which also I want to talk about the USC commits right before I end this video, because this is, I know I've been going super fast, but so my apologies, my battery died real quick. So before I end this video, I do want to ask something. Do you think the Big Ten move was notified for these recruits that went to USC? I wonder if they knew that they were going to potentially be playing Michigan in December, or Michigan State, or in Wisconsin, traveling across country. I mean, that matters. That's not an easy task for a lot of these fast, quick guys that really are used to the hot weather. And maybe Texas A&M offers something different. You go to the SEC, it's warmer weather, you better facilities potentially, or you build something with USC. And I'm curious how big of an interest Zach Branch and Malachi Nelson really have. And Austin Novosad is a guy that I know A&M is pursuing first. And Malachi Nelson obviously is the bigger talent right now, but Austin Novosad has plenty of talent. I think he could be a really damn good quarterback to bring into this class. But it's really interesting that a guy like Malachi Nelson and plenty other guys that have been unnamed for that list. I think right now Texas has the really solid class, obviously the number 5 class. But Texas A&M has a lot of potential. It's going to be really interesting to see how these two programs go head-to-head before they go on the field and play it out one more time for the Lone Star rivalry. If you're at this point of the video, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Leave a sub, leave a like. I'm on the road to 1,000 subs. And go get some sun.